This is a D6 Generation Pip. Bite-sized content for a busy gamer. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ.
Hey, what about me?
Oh yeah, and sometimes featuring Rafe, Hollywood Granger.
D6G Hot Take.
Hey everybody, it's been a while. This is about as far from a hot take as you can get. In fact, I'm calling this one Catching Up with Craig, or Where Has Craig Been for the Last 6 Months, or What's Been Happening with Craig's Quitting Quick Kickstarter Cold Turkey Plan. It's gonna cover all those things and more. So first of all, catching up. Where have I been? Well, we're gonna have to go all the way back in May to the second soccer game of my local club this year. Now, you'll remember that one of the more controversial elements of our 2022 predictions episode was that the boys didn't think I could score, or they thought I could score one goal, so they pushed me into scoring 2 goals to get all the points. It was going to be a bonanza of points, if you will. And so in my second game, we were playing on a smaller field. It was very early in the season, so the teams were much smaller than they become later on. So we were playing on a very small field with no goalies, which is how they usually do things when it's a smaller team. I was driving for my first goal, the first of 2 that I needed to score this bonanza of points, remember. There was only one defender between me and the goal. I went to try to outmaneuver him, and I suffered a big knee injury and flopped on the ground in the best FIFA traditions. So that was not great. And I had 2 months of physical therapy to try to get back up into shape so that I could take my hiking and walking tour of Scotland and Ireland with Reese, which I did. So that was good. And eventually I got to the point where I was running regularly over the summer with Reese, and everything seemed to go back to normal. In that time, you'll remember that I had been playing Rangers of Shadow Deep through all the core rulebook campaigns. I played with Russ and Joe and John and Greg and Dave variously at different times and in different missions. At the same time, I was continuing to play that game. I was also painting up more models for it, collecting a bunch of monsters and terrain for the game to try to match all the different missions in that big core rulebook. So in spite of these injuries, I continued doing that. I quietly got into Ghost Archipelago, which is the sort of fantasy journey to the center of the earth. I talked about it a lot with Terrace. It's a version of, it's not really a version, really. It's a different game to me, but it's considered to be a Frostgrave adjacent game. Okay, so I started collecting the minis, fantasy, pirate crews and whatnot, all the monsters, many tropical monsters, terrain. However, I started sort of leaning a little bit towards a sort of an Eastern or Southern European Mediterranean feel to my monsters and my terrain. And I began in May and then into June working on the sequel to my novel Rise of the Alchemist that came out a few years ago. So I was very excited to revisit that as a sequel. In July, at the very beginning of the month, I was stung by a swarm of yellow jackets. I was stung 7 times. I had never been stung before. I thought I had, but it turns out that I hadn't. And either I have always been mildly allergic to bees and hornets, or this 7 stings in one event caused me to develop an allergy, ended up in the hospital, talking to several different doctors and different appointments. I was immobile basically for over a week. I was just hobbling around very slowly, couldn't really do much. Eventually, that week, I could start driving again and moving around. I was continuing to play Rangers. I was painting up all those monsters in the terrain from Ghost Archipelago. And I continued working on the sequel. And then August arrived. In early August, I was stung again. Now, I've lived on this property for almost 15 years now, so this was very frustrating because I've never been stung before, never really had a problem with the hornets or the bees before. Here I was having my second encounter. I was only stung once this time. Unfortunately, the reaction was way worse, which led the doctors to believe that I was continuing to develop an allergy, which doesn't make me feel great about living where apparently there's a bunch of bees. In August, as I was recovering from that, which was a quicker recovery because there was only one sting, played out all the last missions in the Rangers rulebook, so did everything. It was awesome. Had a blast with that last giant multi-room mission, the Burning Light. Quietly, especially since I hadn't even played a single game of Ghost Archipelago yet, I shifted into Silver Bayonet, which is another one of Joe McCullough's games. This time it's the Napoleonic horror game. Started collecting Napoleonic miniatures. I was really enjoying putting them together. They're, multi-part plastic kits for the most part. Adding little horror details from all the other miniatures that I've had over the years. Really, really enjoyed putting all those together. Kind of a little got out of hand. I think I got 6 full warbands put together and primed. Really enjoyed it. And then started looking into getting new Rangers of Shadow Deep missions through Drive-Thru RPG, which I had never used before. So everything was going well. I was continuing to work on my sequel. Things were really starting to come together. If you write books, eventually you get to I eventually get to a point where things start to kind of fit together, and I really start to get excited about the writing process and see how things develop. That's where I was in sort of mid-August. And then in late August, my wife, Karen, suffered a massive broken ankle that really, really just shut her down. She required a great deal of physical therapy. She couldn't drive for a little while. She couldn't really move around much. And I had to kind of shift my focus. So I had to do the grocery shopping. I had to make sure Reese got everywhere. All the things that my wife usually does, I was doing. Really, really, really learned to appreciate her all the more. Made sure he got to all of his scout things and his golf things and his soccer things and all of his friend things and all those sorts of events, making sure we were all fed, entertained, etc., etc., etc. Everything else fell by the wayside. My writing fell by the wayside. My gaming fell by the wayside as more and more of that time was spent keeping all of those familial plates spinning. And then in September, school started. Karen's situation had improved, but she still needed a lot of help. Reese's schedule got super, super busy, and the play begins. So I had to get everything lined up and ready to go to do the play. So there wasn't any gaming. There wasn't any writing. I wasn't doing any painting. I wasn't doing any collecting. I was barely aware of the gaming industry and community as a whole. And then on September 22nd, in the third rehearsal for the play that we produced this year, that was called Chemical Imbalance, a Jekyll and Hyde play. It's a comedy take on Jekyll and Hyde. I was demonstrating a piece of comic choreography, and I blew out my right knee. The same knee that I had injured in soccer, but this time it was a complete tear of the ACL ligament. I shredded the meniscus, the cartilage that kind of cushions the parts of the knee. And then it flipped it. So it shredded and then flipped. So it acted like a door wedge inside my knee. So I couldn't move my knee without excruciating pain. And there was damage to many of the other ligaments and tendons at the same time. It was going to require major surgery. And Karen was just recovering enough to pick up the slack and start taking care of me as I had been taking care of her. And it was a really, really rough time. That was September 22nd. I'll probably forget it because that's just the kind of guy I am. But right now I can still remember it distinctly. And then in October, I was very lucky. My doctors were great. My surgeon was great. Everybody that we had to deal with through the hospital was fantastic. Everything was rushed. Not rushed, but, streamlined. Surgery was a little over a week later. And during the surgery, I was going to be completely out, not able to go to work, not able to do anything with the play, not able to really do much of anything for 2 weeks before I could then start easing my way back in. I'd never really had anything like this happen to me before. I had all of my technical crew chiefs and managers for the theater program were seniors, and they're amazing. And so they had grown up basically in high school in my program. They all knew what their jobs were. They are all some of the most gifted people I've ever worked with. And so I sat down with them and I explained, I'm going to be out for a minimum of 2 weeks right at the beginning of the whole process, probably longer than 2 weeks for them because of the daily schedule and where their class landed. And it would be totally acceptable if we didn't do a play that year. And I know that's not what they wanted, but it would be understood that it would make sense if we didn't do a play the year this happened. And they did not want to do that. They promised me that they would do all of their work without me following along and barking at them and whatnot. And basically, the show must go on was the lesson they wanted to teach me, and I learned it well. And they did phenomenally. They performed the roles of professionals in an actual theater. Absolutely. The costumes all got ordered or made. The sound effects were all collected and put into the correct files. Lighting was all hung and ready to go. The gobos, the little metal sheets that give shape to different lighting, those were all chosen and ordered. All of this was done without me. Luckily, we didn't blow over our budget because the two girls that are in charge of business management made sure the program was full of ads. The community really stepped up and supported us. The tickets were all ordered. We had some of the best attendance that we've had since before COVID. So everything was a great success. And it all happened because of those kids, they're just phenomenal. Okay. At the same time, obviously, I wasn't doing any gaming or much of anything else, but watching lots of TV. And then a Kickstarter that I did a little while ago, about a year ago, fulfilled the week of my surgery, and that was Archon Studios Rampart 3 Urban Ruins Kickstarter. So obviously a terrain Kickstarter because I am who I am. And that delivered the week of my surgery, and I didn't really look at it much for a while. Eventually, during those 2 weeks, I started having people, because I couldn't move much at all. I was on crutches, and the way I had to move, hold my leg was ridiculously uncomfortable. So I couldn't do stairs or anything. And so I had Reese come downstairs where I had put everything before the surgery, and bring me up one box at a time. And I was cutting it off the sprues and cleaning it, and it's phenomenal quality stuff. And of course I ordered way more than I could ever possibly use, because that's also how I run this whole terrain thing. After the 2 weeks, I returned to half days at school, with air quotes around half, because in order to have rehearsals but fulfill my contract as a teacher, my half days during the play are 7.5 hours long. So the doctors weren't pleased. The kids were happy to see me, but my advanced kids in my production and management class, where all the seniors are, they didn't see me for yet another week, except those that were involved with rehearsal, because they were early in the morning, and that was when the only time I could cut the day in even a little bit in half. Set construction proved to be a huge problem, because I preserve the chunks of the set each year in big flats, like 2 foot, 4 foot, 6 foot and 8 foot sections of wall. And then I design them using those measurements. And then I put them together with the construction class making me any specialized walls I need with windows or staircases. We needed 3 staircases this year, and a big giant window that needed to be able to people to fly out of the window and fly back into the window. So I would normally teach my classes how to put up these walls and support them and build out from the ends, from the the curtain walls out. And I've never fully realized how much of the work I actually do. I would have always told you that I teach my kids how to do it, and then they do it. Not being able to get up on a ladder, not being able to really do anything, not being able to get down on the ground to try to show them how to nail or screw the foot plates into the floor. It was a nightmare. It took forever, but eventually even all that came together, and a lot of people helped out with that as well. So a lot of work went into the set that I did tweet out. Very happy with the way the set turned out, and I tweeted out some pictures of that a little while ago. So if you're curious, you could check that out. When I was home, which I was still home way more than I'm used to, I cleaned up and de-sprued almost all of the urban ruins, which left me with giant piles of really nicely detailed plastic. Okay, so the play, physical therapy, I had to do starting with the third day after my surgery. I was in physical therapy twice a week. I couldn't drive for 6 weeks, so Karen had to drive me everywhere, and then I had a couple friends who would pick me up and drive me. My mom drove me for a little while till she ended up having surgery on her hip, so it's been a very medically oriented season. And then in November, we did the play, and as I said, spoiler alert, the play went very, very well. Eventually, in the last week of rehearsal and production, I was able to drive, so that made things easier. Okay. Now my PT is going forward. In my last session, after an hour of really rigorous work, I was able to straighten my leg out to almost 4 degrees. So ideally, obviously, 0 degrees is where you want your straight leg to be. So I'm almost there. And then I could, with some degree of pain, bend it to 86 degrees, which is almost enough to sit comfortably in a chair without sticking your leg out and tripping the waiter. I can walk without a limp if I focus on walking without a limp. I still struggle with stairs, getting in and out of cars, but things are a little bit better every day. It's going to take months now to get back to 100%, but the surgeons and the doctors and the physical therapists are all very hopeful that I will get back to 100%. So I'm really looking forward to just walking. Running would be great. I really need to start exercising. So, in short, I won't have scored any goals by the time we do the new predictions episode, and I blame Russ and Ray for everything I've just gone through. Just kidding. It's all on me. And it was a warning. My body gave me a warning in June. It was like, you're not really young anymore. But I kept going through it. And, I do wish that one little comic piece of choreography had actually turned out to be funny. Because I think the only real tragedy here is that I did all this to myself and it really just wasn't that funny. But anyway, there you go. I am way behind in my writing, although while I was recovering, I did manage to edit Team Z Shell Game, which is my first Infinity novel about the Nomads, and that should be out soon, so I'm very excited about that. I was very nervous about my Geek Nation touring the Battlefields of the Civil War tour that's coming up in July. But not only is it looking like I'll be good to go for that, but it's also looking like that tour is starting to fill up. So absolutely go to geeknationtours.com and check out that Battlefields of the Civil War tour. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm reading up. I'm watching movies. I'm gonna know everything Hollywood has to teach me about the Civil War. I'm sure it's going to be completely 100% valid. But it should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. Okay, and I'm hoping to start getting some games back in soon. I don't know if I'll ever get those Silver Bayonet models painted or a game of Ghost Archipelago played. But I did pick up a bunch of Star Wars Legion and Marvel Crisis Protocol minis while I was out, mainly over the last weekend with Black Friday sales and whatnot. But I'm really looking forward to that. And so I am hoping to get back to where I started, really. So Kickstarters. I promised a little update on Kickstarters as well. Well, so what's this Kickstarter that landed on my doorstep during the week of my my surgery. It was Archon. Archon Studios is a Polish company that has been doing terrain for quite a while now through Kickstarter. But unlike many companies on Kickstarter that use Kickstarter, they segue into retail, and they've been getting better and better at that, so that if you're not into the Kickstarter, you do eventually have access to the things that they're building and creating, which I'll talk about in a second. But this was their third terrain Kickstarter. They call them Rampart, the Rampart system. It's a bunch of walls. I think in Rampart 2, they developed some floor systems, so you can have some floors, but it's very, very, very geared towards Warhammer 40,000. There's a sort of a lizard man / Aztec kind of theme you can get. There's the ancient basilica, which is very much a gothic sci-fi 40K. And then there's a Cobalt Factory, which is sort of like an alien kind of, maybe like a Star Wars-y kind of feel to it. So the new theme that they came up with for the Kickstarter that I jumped in on is ruined urban ruins, which looks like big giant concrete buildings that bullet pocked and all shattered and cracked and things like that. Lots of cool detail like rebar inside the cracks and wiring and whatnot. Okay. And I ordered a lot, and this also is the first set, themed set that comes with actual like roof / floor tiles and a whole system to add those together. The entire Rampart system is designed to be held together with pegs and then taken apart again. And they show you can use magnets to put it all together and then take it apart again. I don't generally like that sort of thing. I like to build something that's more solid and then just leave it as that. But I don't know. So because it's so versatile, because it's designed to have so many different options, I froze when I ended up getting all of it off of the sprues. I came up with a couple design ideas that I thought were neat, but then if I make those, you can't see the other sides. Every one of the wall tiles is double-sided. One side is all tiled, and it makes it look like you could do this amazing sort of subway interior. The outside is all sort of like solid concrete, but like I said, with all the bullet marks and all the cracks and everything. I got a bunch of, there's bridges that can go with it as well. The stretch goals are crazy for these Kickstarters. Many of them I don't think I'll ever use. There's like literally, I have 4 orc cannons that are very obviously orc cannons that I don't even know if the orcs in 40K have cannons like this anymore, but there's those, but then there's all kinds of cool, supports. There's cool like boxes and crates and barrels and lots of scatter terrain and things like that. Lots of little architectural elements. So really, 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 like it's a giant pile in the pub right now that I'm just looking at, and I'm completely frozen as to what I'm going to do with it. I mean, it is great value, but I spent a lot. Okay. And lest you think I'm saying no to it, I did while I was out with my injuries. They rolled into their next Kickstarter, although it's not on Kickstarter, it's now on GameFound, which I've seen lots of companies using lately. GameFound is where a lot of companies go for their fulfillment. So you go from Kickstarter to GameFound. Archon was the first company that I followed who went into GameFound originally without going through Kickstarter. So their new campaign was called Dungeons and Lasers Encounters. Dungeons and Lasers was the original line of terrain that they did through Kickstarter that you can get now at some of the bigger retail gaming stores online. And Encounters is all about you get one pack that kind of like gives you everything you need for a Dungeons and Dragons encounter. So there's one cool one in a swamp, there's one cool one in the forest, and then there's one cool one in these big cyclopean gigantic ruins featuring lots of giant statues that I thought was phenomenal. And so I jumped in on that. I jumped in on that at a high level too, but I think I jumped in on that before I got these. I don't know. Anyway, I jumped in on that too. I mean, the company is great. The quality of the plastic is phenomenal, and the speed of the fulfillment is incredible. Because, and I think this may slow down again now that it's kind of like their whole process has taken it into consideration. But when they initially did this switch, it meant that, for instance, I believe the Rampart wasn't supposed to fulfill till the spring, and I got it in October, right? So it was pretty incredible. And so what they did was they switched all of their new manufacturing from China to Poland. So they make it in-house now. And they just spent a whole bunch of money upgrading their infrastructure so that they can do all of the plastics in-house. And when they did that, I think the Rampart 3 Kickstarter is kind of the one that sort of benefited from that switch the most. They still had a bunch of stuff being made in China, which of course was all late because of COVID and all the stuff that's still going on over there and all the supply chain issues and whatnot. And so while they were waiting for those and they geared up for Rampart just happened to be the benefit of a bunch of empty slots in their schedule that were being fulfilled through, the last contracts with China. So, it's great. And they're super receptive, and, the quality of the stuff is phenomenal. Like I said, I can't really complain about the quality of the stuff, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And just this week, I got the announcement for Terrain Crate 3 from Mantic. Now, I'm a big fan of Mantic and their terrain stuff. The Terrain Crate 3 obviously is the third big terrain Kickstarter that they've done. This one's all about alien forests and urban battlefield scatter. I was very excited initially, but this one feels different. It's definitely growing way slower than the first two. It seems to have a lot less energy and engagement from the community, and I'm wondering why that energy is kind of. The first one was all about fantasy stuff. The second one was all about sort of modern and gothic and contemporary sort of terrain. So that was really neat. Filled a lot of holes. This one with alien trees. The alien trees look awesome. Don't get me wrong, but they're of very limited use unless you're looking for alien trees. Right. And the urban scatter box that they've got going, it looks OK. I think the fact that it's all not to scale is a little bit throwing me a bit. But it's also the market's pretty saturated for, barricades, barrels and ruined walls. So I think that might have something to do with it. But I'm hoping I'm planning on probably sticking with it. And I'm hoping that it picks up enough speed, because right now the value I don't think is really there. So Kickstarter, how am I feeling about my whole concept? Remember, I kind of tried to pull away from Kickstarter completely. I had pulled away for a few years. Okay. And what am I thinking now after all this time? Now that I've just admitted that I'm 2 deep in and probably gonna be staying in with this third one. Well, the best Kickstarters are great value. The best ones. But you have to be careful, because that value is going to come from somewhere, or the company is going to go under. And most of these companies nowadays are not being run by idiots who are going to drive their company into the ground. So the value is coming from somewhere, right? And in my experience, the value is coming from adding in quantity where it's not needed. Right. So we're going to make a bunch of this plastic, and you're never going to need more than 5, but we're going to give you 30 because that looks really cool. And you're thinking it's all excited because you're all caught up in the moment. Then when you get the game or the terrain or whatever, and you're like, oh, I have 30 of these. I have no idea. So you're paying for that. Now you're paying for it at a great price, but you're still paying for it. Right. And it's not costing the company nearly as much to have 30 of something than to have 15, 2 of 15. You know what I mean? The more variety, the more it's going to cost them. So you're getting a bunch of quantity, but it's of stuff that you might not really need. Okay. And many Kickstarters still are not great value. Okay. If you're looking just for the, bang for your buck, and that's not their fault quite often. If a company is too small, then they're not going to be able to leverage a lot of the things about Kickstarter that makes it, explode and really makes it seem like a big, giant, huge deal, pile of plastic or whatnot. It may be that the interest is too niche. There's just not enough interest in something to generate the income to really make it blow up. And some of them are not, great value because they're not well run. There's still a lot of people. Gaming, for some reason, attracts a lot of people who think that the business side of things will just happen for them because they love games, and maybe they're great at making games. I don't know, but it's same thing with game stores, right? You game stores open and close all the time because people are like, oh, I just had a windfall of $50,000. I'm going to open a game store, yay, because I'm a gamer, and then it collapses because there's a very realistic business side to all of this, which is why the really big Kickstarters for the really big companies that can go to the well over and over and over again, the value is there, but the value is it's not quite where you think it is or what you think it is, because they're smart and they're doing things in a way that will have you feel like you've got a lot, but you're also going to be giving a lot for that. Okay, as an example, the Joan of Arc game, right, by Mythic, great value. Enormous value, giant crates. Literally, if I stack all the boxes for all the games I got for that one Kickstarter, it would be over 8 feet tall. It's a great game. I love that game. It's a phenomenal game. But I spent over $800 on that game. Okay, I got crates of components and amazing expansions that I'm never going to use because I don't play any games enough to get through that much material. And I don't play board games in particular enough to really fully realize the potential of that giant pile of stuff, right? So I would have been very happy to spend $150 on the core game, but I'm not even sure it hit retail. In fact, I'm almost positive it didn't hit retail yet. And that was 2 or 3 years ago, right? And it wouldn't have had all the cool bells and whistles. It wouldn't have had the flags. It wouldn't have had all the other neat stuff that I spent along the way. But was $800 a good price for me for a $150 game with cool bells and whistles? And I just don't think so now. I've got this awesome plastic dragon with a 20-inch wingspan that I'm never going to use again, right? I've got the big giant devil model. I've got so much 15 millimeter fantasy terrain that maybe I need to get into a 15 millimeter fantasy game. I don't know. And so that's where I'm saying, so you've got all of this great stuff, but you're paying for stuff. Are you going to use the stuff that you're paying for is, I guess, what I'm saying, which means you could have easily gotten into the Joan of Arc Kickstarter, spent $150 and gotten the game and some cool stuff. So that's not a fault for the company at all. It's a fault for those of us with a psychological urge to need to get everything, right? And I want every bell and every whistle. And that's where I think the cold turkey kind of comes in for me, because I can't do that for whatever reason. And that's on me. That's not on the company. And terrain has the same problem. So I am just now starting to empty some of my Terrain Crate 1 boxes. So Terrain Crate 1, that was 2017, right? And I'm only emptying them, meaning using all the little bits and pieces now because of Rangers of Shadow Deep, which is a very role-playing sort of game. So I need all these little bookshelves and whatnot. Or I don't need them, but I want them. And I have them because of the Terrain Crate. I spent over $250 in 2017, and I'm only getting to the bottom of some of these crates now and not others. Okay, so that makes me think, what could I get for $250 in immediately useful terrain today? I don't know. Archon, the company that does the Rampart and now the Encounters, right? Great company. But Rampart 3, the Urban Ruins that just came in, is it too versatile? Too many options. I have analysis paralysis with terrain making, which has never really happened to me before. So I spent $400 on that stuff. What could I get today for $400 if I just, went down to the hobby store, went online, and I started looking for cool stuff for $400, especially from 3D printers who you can get the stuff from them in a couple weeks. And in conclusion, I just don't know. I don't know what's best. I do know that it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a Kickstarter campaign. I'm concerned that the whole pay for things you're never going to use idea is actually the hidden Kickstarter tax. That I'm not concerned. I believe that that's the case. That's what makes most Kickstarters financially viable. Okay, and don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to building something with all of this amazing plastic that I've got. Although, seriously, who puts that much detail into the bottom of floor tiles? It'd be great if they were reversible and, one side was one kind of floor tile and the other was another one. But they're doubling their tooling costs to create exposed wires and ceiling lights and stuff that you're never going to see. But anyway, that's just a design issue. And I can't see myself pulling out a Terrain Crate 3, although I do have a huge collection of adapted aquarium plant vegetation for my alien landscape. So who knows? But I don't know. I'm on there. I'm watching it, and I'm hoping for the best. And as far as what's coming next, I don't know. The future is wide open. Maybe there's something big going to catch my eye right around the corner, or maybe I'm going to be more reasonable with my wallet. I don't know. But as I limp into that future, one thing is for sure. Only time will tell.
And that was a D6G Hot Take.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.